Okay, so welcome to opening night of the 20th Annual New Jersey Jewish Film Festival. Herb and I are thrilled to welcome you. This is our 20th festival. It seems incredible. It has truly grown as a result of the hard work of our wonderful committee that just gets stronger every year. This year, I would like to thank our committee chairs, Andrea Bergman, Joni Cohn, and Abby Meth Cantor, and our wonderful festival coordinator, Vicki Jacobs. I'm sorry, festival curator. I can't read. But a very special thank you goes to Sarah Diamond, who has held all of this together through a very, very difficult transition from a real festival to a virtual festival. And I think this is just the beginning of a fabulous, how many days, Sarah? 10, 12?
Through August 9th.
Through August 9th, so a whole month of film. So I think we're up for an exciting program, which you can watch at your leisure at home. Let your friends know there are still tickets available if they want to watch some films with us. We have several wonderful speakers who are coming. I want to give a special thank you to our sponsors, especially Care One, our lead sponsor, and all the people who have bought sponsorships and festival passes. This is what keeps us going. We want to thank our friends at JCC in Central New Jersey for joining with us on this festival, and welcome them. Now, I would like, without further ado, to introduce our special speaker today, Yaron Zilberman. He is an Israeli-American filmmaker, also known for his 2012 film, A Late Quartet, starring Philip Seymour Hoffman, Christopher Walken, and Catherine Kenner. Yaron is the director and co-writer of Incitement. Incitement is the winner of the Ophir Award for Israel's Best Feature Film in 2019 and Israel's official selection to the 2019 Academy Awards for Best International Feature Film. So I'd like to pass this on to Yaron, who's going to talk for a few minutes. Feel free to enter any questions you may have on the chat function here. We're going to try that so we don't have everybody talking at one time. So Yaron, it's all yours.
Okay, hi. Thank you so much for inviting me for this conversation and to speak to the community. I'm now in Israel. I arrived 4 weeks ago from New York after 3.5 months being at home, stay at home order. And now we're here after 2 weeks of quarantine. I'm working as usual. So regarding Incitement, so Incitement was the sort of the product of about 5 years of research that I conducted with my co-writer Ron Leshem, and together with two other important Israeli researchers, writers, in order to learn as much as possible about the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin and see, why it happened, the murder, the assassination, to deal with the questions. There's a lot of sort of conversation about conspiracy, whether he killed him or not, and if he killed him, why, and the whole circumstances in Israel in 1995. And we were drawn to try to learn as much and explore as much as possible about this story because of its importance, first for democracy, keeping democracy in Israel and all over the world, the relationship between religious and country and nation, and issues of freedom of speech and its limitation, and all those questions together. We decided to embark on this project that we felt was very important. And also it's important all over the world where we see such social tension rises, and what are the ways to deal with it, and how society can progress within such sort of conflict, very strong conflict within societies. So that's how we, that was the beginning of the idea. And it took us 5 years to make it. And I would love to hear any question you might have about, the process, the movie. Gladly answer everything.
Yaron, I have a question. It's Herb Ford.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to see the entire screen, and for a second, oh, here it is. Yes.
Here I am. I'm going to wave. Okay. Yeah. To what extent had journalists filled in some of the background when you started about the assassin and his co-conspirators? It seemed that so when you started, had a lot been done beforehand, or were you starting from ground zero?
We started from ground zero, but what we do is obviously we read everything that was written about the subject matter. So at some point, several years into the project, a book came about, and then another book. So we read the book. One was one of the security service interrogators, had his own personal experience with this trauma, and he wrote a book. And then there was another New Yorker that actually went on to Israel, arrived to Israel, and also wrote a book about the family. So there was stuff, but when we started, we did not have that material. So what we did was, mainly you go and you meet all the people that are related to the story, including the family, including speaking to the murderer in jail, including speaking to the judges who were part of, in his court. And you speak to the, police officers that interrogated him, and security service personnel, and people surrounding Rabin, of course, all these, people who helped him on the Oslo agreement and were part of seeing the incitement and what that meant. And then we read everything from courts, because he spoke a lot, he was interrogated. And we just accumulated almost every word that he said, through this process. We met childhood friends of his. We tried to speak to his girlfriends, so on and so forth. And, with all that world of wealth of information and knowledge, we wrote the script.
So one of the facts, or one of the things I saw in the film that was fascinating, was that the assassin was a law student, which seems so totally incongruent that he could be studying law and at the same time planning the assassination of Rabin. I never saw him in a classroom. I was looking for that to see if there would be a classroom. I'm a retired attorney. The rule of law is a big issue, of course, in the States now. And so it was interesting to see that he was in law school, and that background sort of was totally different from his religious interpretations. So it's too much. I asked too much.
No, I can comment on that. First of all, I mean, it's interesting from a humanistic point of view to see that intelligence and ability to study, learn, be very good at a particular profession has no bearing on one's acts. For example, a person committing an assassination, being a murderer, you see that there's no necessary relationship between the two, which is an important thing to know in general, because he was rational, he was smart, he was capable, talented. So these are not part of the sort of prerequisite for somebody not to kill anybody. That's what we see. At the same time, when you talk about legal, the whole idea of studying law is that he feels that he's subject to two laws. One law is the civil law, and there's another law which is sort of biblical, Talmudic, etc., which is religious law. And with when there's a conflict between these two, he is an particular Orthodox Jew with particular beliefs. That's not true for all Orthodox Jews, of course, but for him in particular, and also many settlers in Israel, the rabbinical law is much significantly stronger and more important and overrules the civil law, sorry. So you can see that, being a lawyer in that respect has more than one meaning, right? Because he abided to the laws of Maimonides, and he felt that that's what the law, it's called the law of the pursuer and the law of the informer. These are two laws that were written hundreds of years ago, related to, particular action the Jews are taking, and the consequences is sort of, the punishment is capital punishment, so it's death. So he made an interpretation. Not only he did not come with that interpretation by himself, it's an interpretation that was well accepted within particular groups of people in some parts of Israel.
So we have some questions from other people who are listening in that saw the film. Karen, you want to?
Okay, so Ruth Ross wants to know, he went rabbi shopping to find one who would give him permission to commit the murder. Were these the rabbis depicted in the film? And this is in addition to the question.
Yeah.
Were these actual rabbis who are known in Israel?
Yes. These were particular approaches that he made, and I'm referring to them. I don't point names. The reason why I'm not mentioning particular names is because there were many people. It's not like one person said so and so and he went to shoot. It's more was many rabbis that belong to the religious Zionists within particular in the West Bank, in the settlements. So that was the notion. Again, of course, not everybody. No question about that. I don't want to generalize everybody, but I would say all overwhelming amount of rabbis were open to the interpretation that Rabin, by giving up lands that belongs sort of from God to the Jewish people, the penalty is death. So that's one example. There's another one called Law of the Pursuer, which is, a different nuance. But so the answer is these were rabbis saying things that we know were said to Yigal Amir and were said in public. And there were not only when he pursued and went on shopping, as you said, but also when he goes to the tent, post-protest tent, and you have 4 rabbis arguing whether Rabin, should be killed or not. These were open conversations, many times with the conclusion that, that's the law, that's the rule, and that's what should happen. So that was, for me, the shocking part during the research, learning that and understanding that was the situation.
So this is a combination of several questions. I assume you never got to speak to Yigal. Did you speak to anyone in his family, and did any of them see this film?
First of all, I did not speak to Yigal directly, but I spoke to him indirectly. My head researcher was on my behalf, went to the family and got on the phone with him on particular hours and spoke to him at length for tens of hours in jail, and asking questions that my co-writer and myself sort of fed him and wanted to know more about, and he was speaking freely about everything. So we did have a direct and indirect, but it's somewhat direct conversation. I confronted him with most of the things from you see watching the movie. So that's the question. We also spoke to the mother, spoke to the father, spoke a lot to the brother. So this is also based on all these conversations.
And what about the other people who went to jail for this? Did you speak to any of them?
Nobody went to jail besides, of course, him, his brother, his friend that claimed, they are not in jail anymore, but they claimed, at least one of them claimed for innocence, Dror Adani, the third friend. And the fourth one was his girlfriend, his second girlfriend, so to speak, Margalit Arshefi, who was in jail for 6 months. At the end, I did not speak to her in particular. We had some sort of pre-conversations, but I read a lot, many interviews and news articles with her, talking and speaking about how she views that. And I used mainly what she said in court and in the investigation, because we have to remember it's 24 years later. 24 years later, we all do that. We tend to make new interpretations of past events, and because we're smarter, wiser, and we have distance and perspective. But I was interested in knowing what they said back then. How did they feel back then? How did they view things, and what did they say back then? So that's mainly what I used in these cases.
And did anybody in the family see the film?
We don't know. The father said he will not see the movie, not because of the subject matter, because he's Orthodox, of the kind that doesn't watch movies. And the mother said that she will, most probably, but we don't know. We don't know whether they watched it. I assume they did.
Okay. And there's a question from Stanley, what were the repercussions in the security forces after the assassination?
The repercussions were the head of the Shabak forces, the security forces, resigned, and two another deputy also resigned, and the rest were stayed in the force, and some of them got relocated to different kind of roles within the organization, sometimes even promoted. So they did not find wrong with the actions of the particular security people around him. They found wrong with the preparation, with the what's called, the protocol. The protocol was wrong, and they basically blamed the protocol and those who did not adjust the protocol and were not up to date with the protocol. That's the conclusion. Just as an example, in the protocol way back in '95, you have 3 security service people around Rabbi, around the VIP. When you have 3 people around a person, if you have one in front, one at the back, the third one takes either right or left, which means that he leaves an area uncovered. So it's very hard with 3 people to cover the space around the person. And that was the protocol back then. Now it's more like 5 and 6 people go walk around the VIP because they learned from that event. So the protocol was very problematic to begin with. But that wasn't the only problem. The second problem was that nobody cleared the place in an adequate way, because Yigal Amir managed to fool them as if he were a security service guy undercover. So he actually, instead of hiding, he made himself sort of present to say, this is my job, I'm here to do that. And therefore people said, oh, that's his job, and he stayed there. And in the last moment, there was another issue. One of the security service people went back. They already thought that he's in the car. And they went back and opened the whole, 270 degrees. So that's, the situation.
So a very interesting part of this film was how you integrated actual footage of the events with the fiction,
Fictionalized version.
the fictionalized version.
Yeah. So, the reason that there were several reasons why we did we needed the integration, besides that artistically, I love archive footage. So I loved it anyway to watch it when it comes to a period piece. But in particular, we wanted, to show that this actually happened, that there was incitement, and there were these rabbis, and there were this conversation, and there was that person that shot Rabin, because today, as I said, many people doubt that. It becomes more and more popular to say that he did not shoot Rabin. So just the idea of using archival footage as a document to say, you see, this is it, or, to show incitement, etc. The second reason is that, when you depict protest with 100,000 people, I cannot, of course, recreate that. Right? But I can create maybe 100 people, 150 people. I can do that. So we studied all the archival footage that existed about this big protest, both the pro-peace and the anti-peace protest, back to back. We have these 2, one in Tel Aviv, one in Jerusalem. And then we recreated this moment so that you see an image of like, say, 50,000 people, whatever, 20,000, and we look at the square inside and we recreate that square and we jump in with the same people, same look, same lighting, same posters. We recreated that and you feel seamlessly that you go from one to the other. So the idea was the ability to expand our, sort of manpower and make it bigger. So that was the, second reason. So these are two things, the reality of it and feeling that it's real and see it as a document and to be able to expand. Yeah.
So in an interview with NPR, you indicate this film confronts the denial, and this is something you just spoke about, that persists in Israel regarding the assassination. Could you elaborate? Does this refer to the influence of rabbis, Netanyahu's role, in the current climate in Israel?
Well, I'll say it in a very simple way, very simple. Then you have a prime minister for 10 years now that, as far as I'm concerned, was involved in the incitement against Rabin, incitement to the level that also, brought about the assassination, and he's the prime minister. I find that to be denial by society. Just that fact, without even going farther into explanation. The fact that no rabbi of those that incited for Rabin's assassination were ever indicted, went to trial. Even if acquitted, that's fine. You have judges and they decide, but even go through that process, nobody. That's for me a denial by society. The idea that 75% of those who live in the West Bank say that Yigal Amir did not kill Rabin, that's a denial for me. So that's what I'm talking about, the denial.
Okay, so there was also the issue of his girlfriends who were both Ashkenazi. Do you think he did this partly to impress them?
I think partly to impress them, yes. Not only to impress the girls, yes, the answer is yes, but not only the girls, but to impress his reference, world of reference, which is friends, rabbis, just to be able to be a hero in their eyes. I have no doubt that played a role, yes. And I think also it's society responsibility, because when, you have in the movie at the beginning the massacre by Baruch Goldstein, Rabbi Goldstein. And you have a massacre there, like plain massacre. A person goes into a mosque and just shoots people praying. 29 people perished that day. But the rabbis, some rabbis, important rabbis, hailed him as an important person, and you see that in the movie. So when you, as a youngster, 24-year-old person, religious, that really believes in God strongly and have that conviction, and you see a rabbi, a very articulated, smart rabbi, praise somebody who massacred because it might break the peace accord. For him, he knows already the potential that to use the bullet, you can become a hero yourself and become a tzaddik and a big sage. That's for me also incitement and part of that.
There was some indication that the assassin was sociopathic, that he enjoyed his army experience, roughing up and punishing Palestinians. So on one hand, you have a possibly a sociopath, and also a true believer at the same time.
Yes.
How did you balance that?
That's how I balanced it. I tried to show that all of these attributes are within him. It's very complex. Human beings are very, very complex, as we all know, and it's made out of many, many elements. And he has that element of, I would call it more sadism towards the Palestinians, where he feels strong and now suddenly can go out there with a rifle and beat them, and some kind of element of that, which has to do with his self-confidence, etc. And at the same time, he can be, a true believer, so to speak. I mean, I don't find that to be a believer, but within the context of religious world, he was a believer. go to the synagogue 3 times a day and pray and wear kippah and wear the tzitzit and all. He followed all the rituals, and he was a devoted Jew. And I met many people that admired him. Many people who told me that he had sort of a big name within the education, teaching other kids, etc. So you have that complex personality, and you see the results of that. I find that to be honest, disturbing and also very interesting, and also something we need to know and learn about.
So I'm going to combine two questions here. One person says, I'm still dealing with the murder and appreciating your film from the beginning to end and what we have now. Your film helps to deal with it. What was your motivation for doing this? And another question as part of this, do you have concern that this could happen again?
Yeah, so motivation, I spoke a little bit about at the beginning that my main motivation was, I would say, a concern and feeling, concerned that the country is, and by the way, Israel, I think, is part of something that we see all over the world, of extremism, of nationalism, of doubting democracy and democratic values. You can see all that happening all over the world in our days. And I think that concern brought about the need to tell a story that addresses that, and this story addresses it very strongly. At the same time, it's dealing with the trauma of Rabin's assassination. It's both a national trauma for many, many Israelis, millions of Israelis who live there, and also a personal trauma for those who were part of the peace process, which I supported, of course. And we were hoping that something big is happening that can change Israel and can change the region. And I think changed the region. But the leader who was brave enough to do that paid with his life, and he wasn't able to finish that process. So now we see 24 years of this process being very fragile and happening, not happening, and there's stagnation, basically. Stagnation, but there's still some relationship related to security. So it was very important on that level. And lastly, I wanted the young, generation that wasn't alive during that period or was very young. So that's like 30 years younger, to know what happened. It's part of history. One of the most traumatic events in Israel history happened, and people didn't know. They don't know what happened. And it was very important for us as a mission to make this available in a movie, in a story, told through a movie. So that was the motivation. And what was the second question?
The second question was, do you think it could happen again?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
And this is just a quick question. Who do the deniers say killed Rabin?
Some say that it's a conspiracy that Shimon Peres, the foreign minister, who was Rabin's partner for all that he wanted him dead for various reasons that, for me, they don't make any sense. But people very strongly feel that it was him related. Others think that the security service, that forces within the security service, the Shabak, that are right-wing forces, were afraid of the Oslo Agreement and the peace process, wanted to stop it, and they collaborated, and figure out a way to assassinate Rabin and use the Yigal Amir as some kind of a proxy, or used him in manipulation that he did not know. There's all sort of stories. There are many, many stories, and they come up with like tons of facts that I checked, all of them, despite my co-writer's suggestion not to touch it, because it's just, it's something you can avoid. But I decided to do it just out of responsibility, and I went through all of it, and it's all really, really nonsense. But people believe in stuff like that. What can I do?
Can you tell us a little bit about the actor who was the lead in this? He was really fabulous.
Yes, the actor was, I wouldn't say was a famous actor. So he had experience in a couple of TV shows, but not major. The casting director brought him to audition. He was fantastic. We kept on auditioning him to see if he has all these sides of complexity that we spoke about. So he can have like this, charisma on one hand, and then he can be really lack, confidence and be very smart, but at the same time mean. We needed to check that, and we found that. He, interestingly enough, he did not tell me. Only after he got the role, I told him, it's you are Yigal Amir. Only then he told me that he grew up in the same neighborhood, few streets next to him, that his parents pray in the same synagogue that Yigal Amir's family pray, and Yigal Amir prayed. So it's the same thing, that they know them well, that his brother used to play soccer with him in the playground. And he was also religious, the actor, and then decided not to, but he was. So his world was really part of that, very close to the world of Yigal Amir, but it took a different path. I mean, the opposite path. So that was for me incredible and unbelievable, part of the research. And we went together to the neighborhood and we met. That's how I met Yigal Amir's father and brother in the synagogue praying, invited me to pray. Them. It was very sort of mystical in a way that it happened that way.
So there were two scenes that people have commented on. The opening scene where he's cleaning the tombstones, it was just, and then the closing scene where you have the shot from above. Can you talk about those two scenes?
Sure. The opening scene, I learned during the research that Yigal Amir bought the Beetle, the car, the Volkswagen Beetle. He bought it by working in a grave, like doing that cleaning of the stones and things like that. So that was already, I said, you know what? I have an opening because it's amazing, right? That he's there and he's listening to the Oslo Accord, and we hear Rabbi in the radio talking about peace and the future, but he's also talking about, that's the beautiful speech by Rabbi in Washington on the courtyard, on the lawn, and he's talking really about how he acknowledges the death and how many people paid with their lives, and acknowledges the sadness and how hard it is to make peace because of that, but nevertheless we have to do it. And he explains that in elaboration while Yigal Amir listens to that and already prepares prepares Rabin's, in a way, tomb. So it's for me, that was like, I had to do it as a writer. And then we learned, crazily enough, that the actor, Yuda Nahari, that's what his father does as well. And he used to accompany him when he was young to do the same, to work with him in the grave yard and helping him clean graves. So that was like, whoa. And that's why we decided to open that. It's, just to have all this conflict and juxtapositions play together. The last scene is, this is an exceptional situation in history where you have an assassination like that, a prime minister assassin on camera live. You do have, like in JFK, you see JFK being shot, which is also wild. But here you have the assassin and you have both of them in the same shot, and he shoots you. It's just like never done before. So, and we have that document, so I wanted to use it. And the document was shot by was filmed by almost a bystander. He was a sort of an artistic photographer, used to go to events like that and to document it. So he went there and he, found his own place and filmed this whole thing. So I wanted to integrate it. And that's why I played, all the movie plays all the time with archive versus what we film. Like fiction and real, until at the end of the movie, you have this climax where fiction and real really comes together. And Yigal Amir, the actor, and Yigal Amir in the archival footage join in a way together, becoming one. And then you have the assassination, so that it's like, this is really happening. It's happening now. And also to show how this entire movie is built on that kind of style, where we look at the images and we recreated this world so that it's going to be as authentic as possible.
So I think we want to thank you. We want to say that people have expressed, there have been a lot of comments about the hope they had for the peace process and how this was just an absolutely devastating event for Israel, for Jews around the world. And we hope we can move forward. And thank you for this film. And I know you said you're working on a new film. Can you share with us what it is?
Yeah, this is another Israeli trauma. It's Yom Kippur War, the war 1973. It's a 10-episode TV series, you know, like a Netflix kind of thing. And it's about the first 3 days of the war, where the north of Israel was almost totally occupied, and Israel was in risk of existence. And so I'm telling that moment through the eyes of the soldiers, not the generals, but rather the soldiers, and how they deal with the hardship, the trauma, the relationships, trying to, again, look very closely at how we human beings behave under such extreme conditions, and you know, what kind of, who are we as human beings?
Well, thank you so much. I think this really added to our appreciation of the film. It was a really great film. I want to remind everybody that we have films coming up this weekend. Don't miss them, and keep joining us. And thank you all for being here this morning.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Film.
Thank you very much.
Awesome program. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining us.
Wonderful. So glad we got to do this.
Okay, good luck to you. Sarah, thank you for all you're doing also.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
Sarah.
So all the
Messages.
sponsors are going to get another email today about standing up, falling down. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sarah, thank you. I think this format worked really well.
Yeah.
I think it was okay. What did everybody think? This was okay?
Sarah mentioned the thing about the weekend, about when people buy tickets, that they won't get they will not get a
Right, but
email
this is
back
not
on
the
Saturdays.
That's true. So if anyone's going to purchase a ticket for standing up, falling down over the weekend while it's already open for viewing, they're not going to get the actual link during Shabbat. It's going to come Saturday night afterwards. So
Okay.
if anyone hasn't purchased a ticket yet,
At least you didn't have to run around with the
I don't think a lot of people
microphone.
who already did.
Right.
Bye, everybody.
Sarah, thank you for organizing this and getting it all together. I'm really
I
glad
can't
you
see her
did this.
anymore. I'm sorry.
Thank you for organizing this.
It was wonderful, and all your emails are informative and clear. It's a pleasure. Fun.
Tell your friends. Thank you, Sarah.
Bye-bye, everybody. Be safe.
Thank you.
Bye.